Welcome to another year of GLIAC Weekly. New year, new intro, Tony.
I guess.
I I am Matt Witwicky, and I am here with our GLIAC expert and longtime Michigan resident Tony Nicolette. Tony, how are you doing?
I am just dandy, Witt. It's great to be back talking football again, man. August is something I always look forward to.
Absolutely. Tony and I will go ahead and we will take a look at the coaches poll. They went ahead and did 1 through 8, and we'll go over them. We'll kind of have a little suspense and go 8 to 1 in order. And then we'll also go ahead and talk about if Tony and I see that any differently than the coaches did. And then we'll also take a look at the first week's games, since we don't have a ton of games in that week 0.
We got a few,
and we'll kind of talk our way through some of that. So we got a lot on the show here for you, and we're going to go ahead and kind of load things up here. Our IT department once again coming up with new graphics for the show, and we're going to go ahead, Tony. We're just going to go ahead and kind of start right on in.
And the IT department, I owe them a pizza,
I think. So let's go ahead and as we kind of pop on in, the first thing we're going to look at here is we've got Northern Michigan, the Wildcats. Last year, 0-11, 2 straight seasons of that. They're going to try and get the pay window this year. They bring back returning starters, 9 offensively, 6 defensively. And Tony, kind of what's your thoughts or your outlook on the club heading into this year?
Well, Shane Richardson, he's a Northern guy at his core. And so I think when, they were looking for somebody to lead the program out of where they were, kind of getting back to basics and getting a cat in there, I think was something that they wanted to do. And unfortunately, he just had a rough go of it those first 2 seasons. I think, the recruiting, I think he's had to change how they approach getting kids in there and what types of kids that they want. Last year, he kind of made a sudden shift to more of an option-based offense. And so we're starting to see if that, after a year, and I think maybe even been late 23 that they started moving towards that.
Right.
We'll start to see if that could start to get some legs under it. They do get Aiden Horde back, who kind of did most of the quarterback duties over the last 2 years, really. But it sounds like in camp, it's a relatively open competition. So it'll be interesting to see, if he gets the nod there. They do have some pieces, Witt. Jahai Wood was an all-GLIAC guy, led the team in rushing last year. He'll be back. Jax Hertel and Mitch Larkin are, the 2 leading tacklers on the team. Both had Hertel was all GLIAC last year. So, they got some pieces on both sides of the ball. When you see 9 guys coming back on defense, you think, okay, there's some building blocks there. The problem is that's a defense that gave up 41 points a game last season. So,
right.
They don't have a whole lot of direction to go but up. And obviously we're going to need to see if they can make those steps happen.
Well, interestingly enough, in the spring, they locked horns with Minnesota Duluth.
They did.
And while Minnesota Duluth didn't, they didn't go with their everything quarterback Kyle Waljasper, they still got the better of Duluth in that scrimmage by all indications. I would like to think that that's kind of something that you would build off of coming into this year, since you haven't seen a win in a long time, wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah, you'd have to, because, obviously everybody knows that, Duluth's a team that if they're not going to win the Northern Sun, they're going to be, fighting at it by the time you get to week 8, week 9. They're still going to be in it. So, that's a team that's always been physical and always capable. So, yeah, I'd like to think if you got the better of that scrimmage, it's even like they're talking about the preseason, that we've been watching with the NFL. You're going out there and doing it against guys who are getting paid to be there. So, it might be their 2s and their 3s, but it's still, you went out man to man and actually took care of it. So
no doubt.
Yeah, you got to hang your hat on something.
Let's go ahead and move on up to number 7 in the coaches poll. We've got the Roosevelt Lakers out of Chicago. They were able to go ahead and get a win last year in their inaugural season in the GLIAC. If we take a look, they're returning 6 starters offensively, 5 defensively, and Billy McKeon will jump on in as the head coach for this year. Jared Williamson had been the head coach there with the program pretty much the entire time. Yeah, and he had been going through over the last handful of years some different injuries that he had gotten when he had kind of gotten swept on out in that Ferris game and ended up hurting his leg again, and he's really had a tough situation over the last handful of years, just kind of hard luck stuff that's happened.
Right.
I know that he's got a good sized family. He was busy with kids, all that, and he kind of took a step back and ended up going to Illinois Wesleyan, and a little bit less involved than his trip going to and from Chicago each day,
right,
downtown and everything else. So Coach McKeon, who was a coordinator on staff, he's going to go ahead and take the head role. I remember covering Billy McKeon as a wideout when he was at St. Xavier in Chicago, a Chicago guy, and he was so kind of an interesting deal with all of that. But moving past that, what were your thoughts on kind of their first campaign, Tony, and how they are looking heading on to this year?
Well, I think their defense acquitted itself maybe a little bit better than a lot of people were anticipating. I mean, they gave up 28 a game, but that's still, when you come in cold into the type of, week in, week out play that you're seeing in the GLIAC, that's really pretty good. Right. I think thematically for Roosevelt, I think they kind of felt like last year was a year of they didn't know what they didn't know. And by that, I mean, they thought, okay, we feel like we could be competitive. We've been competitive in the NAIA. And they get into that week in and week out of what it takes in the GLIAC. And they were just like, okay, we got a few pieces we got to figure out. And we thought we were closer than maybe what we really were. And so, like you say, they've got, about half the starters are back. They've got some things that they're going to have to figure out, particularly at quarterback. It's a wide open competition as far as I can tell at this point. I mean, they've got a couple of transfers from D1 that are bounce back guys that they think they like. A Harvard guy, an Ole Miss guy. They brought in a freshman who was extremely well rated within Illinois. So they feel like they got some guys who can probably steer the offense. They're just going to have to be somewhat inexperienced at that position. And they actually have some skill position stuff that they're going to have to figure out with too. I mean, RJ Smith is back at running back, so you got a little bit going for you there. But on the outside, a lot of question marks, especially after losing Keontae Nixon to the transfer portal. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the show.
Right. Right.
Jack Young Jr. was an all GLIAC tight end. So, I mean, it's not like they've got nothing offensively, but they're gonna have to figure some things out. And then, defensively, they're still going to be putting some pieces back together. I mean, Luke Deschereaux up front, they're happy to have him back. I think they can build around him. And they feel like their defensive line is going to be a little bit more deep and a little bit more better prepared this year for what it's going to take to, again, week in, week out within the league. And they get Carlos Conley back, too. I mean, that's somebody that's missed a lot of time the last 2 seasons. And he was quite the banger before he was dealing with some injuries. So if they can keep him healthy, they feel like that defense can kind of pick up where it left off and maybe even take a step forward this year.
I'll be interested to see in future years. The Chicagoland area does not have an intermediate D2 right there.
Yeah.
And the fact that there isn't really an FCS presence in that market either, Tony, you would think that, St. Xavier does real well in the Chicagoland area and the NAIA world. But boy, you'd like to think that they are going to have a little bit of a niche there where they should be able to capture a pretty good football market right there.
Yeah, you'd think, because I think the only real prominent D3 school down there is maybe Benedictine. There might be a couple others.
Right.
So it's a pretty open market. And when you think of that Southern Wisconsin piece that fits right down there too, there's no D2 football in Wisconsin. Boy, you'd think there's enough of something there that they'd be able to carve out some media coverage at least a little bit and start to drive some attendance and see what they can do to get a presence going. I'm with you on that. It will be interesting to see if they can make that shake out.
Yeah, North Central is there in the Chicagoland area.
Oh, yeah.
A D3 power, but at the same time, at that D2 level, I'd like to think that they may have a little bit of an opening there. I'm going to be curious to see if they really start to stock up on that Chicagoland talent with
Yep.
that move on up like they've had. Well, let's go ahead and we're going to move on to, we've gone from the 8th team, the 7th team, and the coaches. Now we're going to move to the 6th place team. And this is the Wayne State Warriors, Coach Ty Wheatley in his 3rd season. They were last year 2-9, 6 guys on offense returned, 5 on defense. We see a major playmaker there for them in the photo. Guy we've talked about quite a bit. How do you see them coming into this year?
Well, Wayne's actually an interesting team to look at, Whit, from the standpoint that I think they're more emblematic of what we're going to see a lot in the league this year, which is there's a lot of youth on a lot of these rosters, especially as we move our way up from 6 to 1. So there are going to be a lot of guys who are somewhat untested in some spots that are going to have to come in and start, making some plays for these teams. Even Champ Edwards is on the younger side of the eligibility arc, if you will, and he missed some games last year. So keeping him healthy is going to be really critical, because when he was in there, he was one of the more prolific playmakers in the GLIAC. I mean, it was really hard to contain him, and I think a lot of teams felt like, boy, when they didn't see him dress for games, they were probably glad they didn't have to try to defend him, because he was really starting to come on. They do have Justin Cox back, so they kind of feel like they've got 2 starters, if you will. So I don't know if we'll see maybe both of those guys at different points. Certainly, I think Edwards has proven himself as the more premier of the 2 playmakers, so we'll probably see him more than not. But yeah, I mean, it's again, this is a young team. I mean, 46 freshmen got brought in this past year, along with some transfers. So I mean, it's a team that's really going to be on the younger side, and it's going to have to figure some things out on both sides of the ball, in part because they lost some key playmakers too. Leading receiver Miles Catherine's lost from last year. They do get Will Edwards back on the offensive line, and he's a bit of a stalwart for them, so they're pretty happy with that. And Xavier Tyus is probably the most experienced running back that's back. But I mean, in general, on the offensive side, they're going to have to figure a few things out and figure out, hey, this is great that we've got our leading passer and leading rusher back in the same guy. What are we going to do to help supplement that?
Sure. What, Tony, you know their fan base and expectations far better than I do. Now, obviously, I mean, I can remember when, it's been, 15 years since they made it all the way to a national title game.
Yeah.
Since that time, things haven't gone quite the same. What do you think the expectations are by their fan base? Is there a certain base number that, hey, they need to be a certain amount of wins, or they start thinking, hey, this isn't going the right way? What are your thoughts?
That is a really loaded question. And I've spent enough time covering the GLIAC, and I know enough folks at Wayne, and I've also read the message boards on our site for a lot of years. So, I mean, when you talk about that fan base, it's a passionate one.
Right.
But I think it's a fan base that's it's hard to find a way to say this without it sounding like they're very realistic, right? They know that it takes a lot to constantly be at the 8 wins, 9 wins, 10 wins every year in the GLIAC. And you don't just flip a switch and go to that overnight, right?
Right.
And, during Paul Winter's run there, they had flashes of that, right? They'd have a couple of 4 and 7s or 3 and 8s, but then they would go 7 and 4 and then 8 and 3. And so they had flashes of being able to see what it was on that top end of the spectrum. And I think the frustration that they probably had at that point in time was just the inability to keep doing it consistently. It was more flash than it was consistency in terms of, okay, they'd have a great year and then they couldn't follow it up with one the next year. So I think for most of those fans, they'd love to see, hey, can we get to 6 and 5 and know we can probably do that every year? I mean, I don't think they're looking for that to be a miraculous turnaround. If they could just get to where they were 500 or better and being competitive in some of those games against the Saginaws and Ferrises and Grand Valleys of the league, I think they'd be thrilled with that.
I think there's a good portion of the league that, based on how things have been, even before COVID until this point, I mean, let's be honest, Ferris and Grand Valley have really not just been elite in this league, but it have been elite nationally.
Oh,
So I
for
mean,
sure.
it's hard to think, oh, we need to be up with them, but there's plenty of room to still move up before you get to them.
Well,
So,
and case in point, the next team we're going to talk about in the preseason standings was 7-4 last year. There were 5 of the 8 teams in the GLIAC that went 7-4 last year. So your assertion that there's room in that middle section to still be a really good football team is 100% correct.
and right into that, he segues me on into Michigan Tech, the Huskies, and we got Ethan Champney right there, but great wideout that they have. But I would be remiss, we didn't mention at the top of the show, for those who have watched our national show on Sunday evening, we talked a little bit about how the playoff field has changed a little bit for the GLIAC in that they're now in Super Region 3.
Yeah.
And that changes in terms of who's in that. The Northern Sun, so you have your Mankato's, your Augustanas, and teams like that, Bemidji. Then you also have Duluth as well, obviously. Then
Sure.
if you go ahead and you take a look, we have the GMAC, who obviously the GLIAC's very familiar with a lot of those squads. And then you also have the GLVC,
Mhm.
where Indianapolis is at, Truman, and others. So the landscape for GLIAC playoff football is a little different than what it has been, where you're seeing the MIAA and the Hardings of the world and so forth. But we've also gone from 7 teams to 8 teams. So there's a chance, Tony, and I think probably a better chance now for the GLIAC than before, that you could look at 3 teams. Let's be frank. The GLIAC has been winning playoff games no matter what the alignment's been, MIAA, whoever. But at the same time, now I take a look at this and I say, okay, you have 4 conferences, but you're clearly the elite conference in that grouping. I think three teams getting in here is not a stretch.
Not a stretch. And it's funny you bring this up because I think this kind of harkens back to I always bring up Chuck Martin when I'm on these shows, but he's always had so many interesting positions or thoughts on things. If you think back to the aughts when Chuck was the head coach at Grand Valley, one of the things that really frustrated him at that point in time was they were in the same region with the North Central. And the North Central at that point in time had a similar footprint to the GLIAC in that they only had 7 or 8 teams in them, maybe 9. And so you could play round robin of everybody in your league and still go out and play 2, 3 out of conference games. And you'd see some of the weaker teams in the North Central still post 2-1 or 3-0 non-conference records and bolster up the overall strength of schedule number that the North Central would have. And at that point in time, the GLIAC was playing 10 GLIAC games. So your ability to actually bump your strength of schedule up wasn't as good. Well, last year you saw a perfect example of where you get 5 teams go 7-4. That means you won a lot of out of conference games as a league. And so everyone at the top of the GLIAC had their strengths of schedule get bolstered up. And against a Northern Sun, who's also got enough good teams to look for possibly 3 spots, sometimes the math might be a little bit harder for them.
Well, and before we move on to Michigan Tech in detail, we do have plenty of activity in the comments. Some good, some bad. No, our guy John Dykstra, who's our obviously does the MIAA show with me. That feels like weeks ago now. He mentions the fact that he feels like there will be 3 teams, and I think that kind of goes along with what we were saying, and now that's got to play on out yet, and the GLIAC's also going to have to make sure that they do good in non-conference, because that's going to shape the strength of schedule for the league and the teams within it. So, well, enough delay. Those people are looking at Michigan Tech fans are going, okay, are they going to get to us yet? Last year they end up beating Saginaw Valley at the end of the season. They go 7-4. bringing back 10 offensive starters. Is that possible if you lose the top wideout and the quarterback? Anyway, then from there, 7 defense come back. You got to like what they're doing here. And frankly, you know, a week or a year ago, they took this Bemidji team that they're going to open with, Tony.
Yeah.
They took them overtime. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of positive things coming into this year, wouldn't you say?
Well, and there are a lot of us who follow that stuff super closely that were really, no offense to Bemidji, but we wanted Michigan Tech to get that win for the GLIAC, just like we were just talking about. So,
right.
This is an important stretch for Coach Metlack and his staff, because I think, you know, they're coming into that third year. They really want to try and see if they can take a step forward. And, you know, JD's calling out Saginaw is the team that breaks through. I think Metlack really thinks his crew can be one of the teams that breaks through and snags a third playoff spot for the GLIAC, or a playoff spot in general. So, you know, again, thematically here, though, they're young. I mean, they graduated 30 guys last year. I mean, that's a huge outflow of key guys and key talent. Multi-year starter at quarterback that's gone. You know, you talked about Ethan Champney, but, you know, he was part of a trio of guys, you know, along with Brandon Michalak and Darius Willis, that were really good playmakers for that Tech offense for a lot of years. And so, you know, he's going to have a new quarterback throwing to him. Looks like Alex Bueno is probably going to be that guy. They do get Jake Roof back, who's their leading rusher. So the offense actually should be relatively stable. They got 4 out of 5 starters back. Brandon DeVries is an all-GLIAC guy who's going to anchor that group. So I think they feel pretty good about where the offense is going to go, even if it's a new starter at quarterback. Defensively, they got a few more holes to fill. You know, Dante Bazanis led the team in tackles last year, so they felt pretty good about that. You know, Chase Cook stepped in real nice after Mark Sipple went down with an early season injury. So I think they feel like they got a couple of key guys there, but there are probably more question marks on defense, you know, maybe than they'd like to have going into the season. You know, I mean, it's a defense that was on the fringe of being pretty decent, you know, allowing less than 21 points a game. That group's going to have to try and take a step forward and drive that number down, because, you know, that's what it takes to really be competitive nationally, is to kind of be one of those teams that can only allow teens per game or less.
Tony, I think I lost you there for a moment. Are you still there, buddy?
I'm still here.
Okay, good deal. So looking at, we're halfway through the field right now. We're going to go ahead and take a look at who's next in line. The coaches have, and by the way, this is, I want to give kudos out to the GLIAC League office. They went ahead and prepared a lot of what we're looking at here, and then we just kind of supplemented it from there. And if we go ahead and we move forward, we've got next in line the Davenport Panthers. 7-4 a year ago. It seems like they're kind of in that, you can almost pen them in for right around that 7-4 mark each year, right around that plus or minus 1.
Yeah.
And, you know, then from there, they bring back 7 offensive starters, 9 guys on defense from a team that was pretty decent defensively. You know, Sparky's now 9th season here. What are some of your thoughts about the Panthers coming into the year?
Yeah, well, I mean, having that many guys back on defense is going to be big for them, because, again, that's a unit that has been a little bit of their stalwart. You know, only 21 points a game allowed last year. Same story as Tech, right? I mean, if they're really going to get to elite, they're going to have to drop that a little bit. But the offense is also going to have to pick it up a little bit as well. And you know, they lose guys like Myron Harris, who was, you know, kind of all world for them last year.
Right.
They are going to have some questions to figure things out at quarterback. And I think that's the biggest key for Davenport, Witt, is, yeah, there are a lot of starters that return on defense, but a lot of it's still kind of unknown stuff. And then the offense is full of unknowns. So, you know, you got to have to need somebody to take over at the running back spot. I mean, actually, Myron Harris's brother, I think, is on the roster at transfer from Youngstown. So they think he could do really well. And I saw some live action of DeMarco Singleton when he was at Wayne last year. And so Davenport's really excited to have him. On the outside, we talked earlier about Keontae Nixon, who was all GLIAC for Roosevelt last year. He's going to probably be the main guy pass catching for Davenport this year. But then getting him the ball is going to be the thing. So, I mean, you look at last year, DeJuan Mathis was the guy they were most excited about.
Right.
He's likely the starter heading into week 1 here. they really liked him last year. But I think he just had been dealing with so many nagging injuries over, his transfer periods and everything else, where he just still wasn't all the way right going through last year. And that's why you didn't see him start every game. I mean, you still saw plenty of Micah Horo, and even a freshman, Mac Vandenhout, got a couple starts last year at the end of the season. So Vandenhout and Mathis are both back. I think the betting money is on Mathis to be the guy, and if they can keep him healthy, I think they really feel like he's finally all the way healthy and all the way right, where he can be a real playmaker. I mean, let's not forget, this was a kid that went to Georgia out of high school. So I mean, this was an elite level high school talent,
no doubt.
So if Davenport feels like they can get that kind of elite level production out of him this year, they're going to really sneak up on some people and make some things happen on offense.
Yeah, and for those who weren't familiar with Keonta Nixon coming on over from Roosevelt, he was maybe as good as any receiver last year in the conference, and can stretch the field, and I think he's a real nice pickup for them. But like you mentioned, they're going to need to be able to get that ball downfield. I think defensively, I'm not concerned about them, Tony, but offensively, do we think that they can go ahead and have enough firepower to kind of battle with those top three teams that we're really looking at there? That's kind of my question at that point.
Yeah, no, and that is a fair question. And like we talked about, I mean, I think they've got pieces that they feel like could be really good. It's just a matter of, can they actually, move the ball and score some points? And then defensively, it's, Austin Stief was a great player for them last year. 8 tackles for loss, 36 tackles overall. He's got to replace Austin Allward as far as like their primary guy up front, but they really feel like he can do well. They run more of a 4-2-5 at Davenport, so the linebackers are pretty key, and both their leading linebackers are back from last year. Latrell Scott had a nice season for them at that position, and Jamar Mills actually missed a few games, but they really feel like he's back and healthy and could do a good job. So, figuring out what they're going to do in the secondary is going to be a little bit of a question mark for them. But, yeah, like I say, if they can hold at that 21 or better and see if they can't sneak it down into the teens, this could be a really tough team. And I think that's the other thing that, once you start getting to Tech and higher in these rankings, these teams get progressively more physical. And that's one of the things that has made them super competitive over the stretch of years in the GLIAC, is the fact that they figured out how to be very physical. And I think, even going back a few spots to Wayne, I think that was one of the things that Tyrone Wheatley, I keep seeing interviews with him where that's one of the themes that he is preaching with his team, is they have to be disciplined but physical. So, I mean, that physicality that has become the hallmark of GLIAC football is something that these coaches really preach it and teach it, and they try to live it. So it's one of the things that, the Davenport, you saw that week in and week out teams that they played. I think we're surprised at how physical that they were, and they probably shouldn't be, because that's been a hallmark of them since Spark got there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, moving on up in the list here, we get to Saginaw Valley State, and 7-4 squad. Returning starters, 9 offensive, 3 defensive. So kind of some mixed thoughts about that. And Ryan Brady, his 6th season here. We thought a year ago, Tony, that this team was right on the cusp. Then they dropped the Northwood game. We talked about that quite a bit. Yeah. At the end of the year, I almost felt like they knew that they couldn't get in at the 11th hour, and just kind of laid an egg a little bit at the end. But what are some of your thoughts here? I would imagine it's a little bit of, well, the offense has some good things, but defensively, boy, we sure lost a lot.
I think that's fair. Now, you and I have also talked about, both on our shows and off air, about how important we think Brandon Clayton is to that group.
Yes.
So having a defensive coordinator of that caliber, I think even though they lost as many guys as they did on defense, everybody should still be making sure that they keep an eye on what this new defense is going to look like, even though it's kind of got new players or new people in the roles. I will say that defense has got a lot to replace. I mean, I don't want to undersell the lift that Coach Clayton has this year. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about all the guys that Saginaw had that were just super productive. And they lost a lot of seniors, but they also lost 3 guys to the transfer portal. A couple of guys are in NFL camps. I mean, it's
Right.
a lot that they lost. Now, with that said, Adam Leduc was still a big producer for them up front last year. Tim Alonzo Jr. did a lot for them up front last year. So I think they feel like up front, they're probably still going to be pretty solid. And if you can build around your defensive line, sometimes you can fill the rest of that in. And I think that's going to be their approach. The offense is probably just going to have to carry the team here. I mean, you can see the picture of Mason McKenzie here. I mean, that's the one advantage that Saginaw Valley has really over just about anybody else in the league is he is the only absolute day one starter that started every game last year for his team. I don't think there's anybody else in the league that can say they've got that coming back this year. So, I mean, offensively, yeah, I mean, they get Terrence Brown back at running back. Eric Kraft is back on the outside. All 3 of those guys earned some all GLIAC nods last year. So that offense is going to be something to deal with, and maybe more so than we've seen from Saginaw Valley in a lot of years. And they feel really good about their offensive line they got coming back. I mean, this is going to be an offense that should move the ball, and if the defense takes a little while to catch up, sometimes that's how you got to do it.
I hadn't seen yet, Tony, that they had a roster posted yet for this year. For those who haven't posted rosters yet this year, for us in media who are preparing, this is me giving you a hard time officially for it. Terrence Brown, running back for them. Do we know for sure if he's back or not? I have yet to see anything further about it. And I'm asking this. We've had a handful of different players that, due to maybe rosters not being posted or other stuff, maybe not on social media, where we just haven't quite seen an update on some of that stuff yet.
Yeah.
Have you seen or heard anything further on that yet?
Yeah, no, that's one of the things, and I probably am remiss for thanking every SID in the GLIAC for spending some time with me talking through who they think is going to be key contributors to their team, some of the feedback they've been getting from coaches. And so, yeah, I mean, Saginaw's SID confirmed for me that Terrence is back. So I know you and I were keeping an eye on him back in the spring because we saw that he did dip his toe in the portal for a while. But
and he's a playmaker.
Yeah, he sure is. So, no, the Cardinals are definitely glad to have him back, and they're looking forward to that.
Yep. Okay. And as like you mentioned, I mean, we took a look at that front 7 last year, Tony, with the back. I mean, they could have had maybe the best career linebackers in the country. And
it was phenomenal.
Right. And it's just a lot to replace. I mean, it's easy for people to say, oh, next man up. When there's so much production and playmaking, that's a little bit of a different game. So I'll be curious to see if Coach Clayton can kind of get them near where they were last year. Because if he can, they should have zero issue being right back where they were.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, basically Saginaw, I don't think they're going to have any trouble necessarily being right back where they were. I think the question for them is, can they take the next step forward? Can they make Mr. Dykstra the prophesizer? And they take the step forward, because I think that's really where they've been the last stretch of years, Witt. I mean, if you really look at it, since COVID, they've played Ferris and Grand Valley both pretty tough. And that was actually a topic that I think we were dabbling with for Sunday night's show was, hey, who's going to give Ferris fits this year? And Saginaw is a team that, 3 of the last 4 against Ferris have been decided by 5 points or less. And the one time they kind of got blown out a little bit, it was actually a 1-score game with about 16 minutes to go. So Saginaw knows how to hang with those teams in the GLIAC at the top end. It's okay, when are they going to start knocking them off? And for Dykstra's prediction to come true, that's what's going to have to happen this year. Is that next step's got to happen for Saginaw?
Yeah. Now there was someone who mentioned something here about it's criminal Saginaw didn't break the top 25 last year. Actually, they did.
They did.
They were in ours. So
they were.
So
and then I think they got beat.
We need to make sure we're looking at the right places. So
I think they were in our poll. I know they were in it once. I think they may have snuck into it twice,
right,
on 2 separate occasions. And then it was always preceding a game that they would then drop and they would fall back out.
Right. They were kind of right in that mix. They were always just about to get in and stuff like that. It was always the battle of, okay, you're playing Ferris and you're playing Grand Valley really close.
Yeah.
But yet you're not taking care of business in all the other games you need to win. And so it was always kind of that dilemma of how do you rank a team like that? It really makes it difficult, to be honest.
Sure. And I think, if they hadn't lost all that they did defensively, I think people would have probably been far more apt to make sure that they were in the top 25 now. I mean, even if they could have held on to Brandon Rawls and Eli Gordon,
right?
Just a couple more of those pieces that they lost through the portal, I think that could have made a difference for them.
Yeah, I think that was one of those things where when people were looking at them this year, they had such great talent, and then they graduate, and then you like you mentioned the portal and everything else. I think people are going to just need to see that a little bit from them this year. But
yeah,
let's go ahead and kind of move on in our mix here. Up next, well, Grand Valley State, the Lakers, and 11-2 last year. 11-2, Tony, sounds really, really good for 99% of Division II.
Yeah,
and but when you have a loss to Ferris that ends up getting away in the second half and getting loose, and then the Harding game was just not a game that Grand Valley fans are going to remember at all in a good way. And all of a sudden, that 11-2 feels different for Grand Valley fans, and an offense that was not what it needed to be for them to be more successful. Now, Coach Wooster coming into the third season here, I noticed that Coach didn't have his returning starter list here. Sneaky Coach, we see that. They didn't get past us. But what are we expecting to see from them? I would imagine it's got to start with some type of changeover at quarterback because of the fact that it kind of feels like nobody who took snaps has returned.
That is a fair statement. So it is going to be all new blood at quarterback for Grand Valley starting this year. I think coming out of camp, I think they wanted to make sure that they knew they had their direction. So they did name Andrew Schuster as the starting quarterback. He's a redshirt freshman from the east side of Michigan. I think it's somebody that the coaching staff has really been excited to have in camp. Or on the roster since they signed him a couple of years ago. So he's gonna be the starter. But I think one of the things that the Lakers are trying to move forward with is kind of the idea of, hey, we may play several guys. So we already talked about how Davenport might play a couple of different guys. We'll talk in a minute about how Ferris has made very constant employ of the idea of playing several guys. And so I think Grand Valley feels like, okay, if we can have a few different quarterbacks who can do a few different things and do them all well, we can go with the hot hand. If somebody gets hurt, we got guys who can back that up. So I would expect that you might see some guys like Brady Drogosh a little bit as well. And I think there's an Olenichek guy that from the east side of Michigan that everybody's pretty excited about too. So you could see
talk about him a little bit more if you would, Tony, because he's got a pretty interesting profile.
Yeah, I think he's more of a speed guy. So I think you might see, if I had to put my wizard cap on, from what I'm learning, it sounds like Schuster might be more of the pure passer of the group, but can run it well enough. Drogosh can throw it well, and he was a highly recruited quarterback out of Warren De La Salle over on the east side of Michigan. He ended up at Cincinnati for a couple of years.
Right.
Probably a little bit bigger and a little bit more physical.
There, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then Olenichek, I think, has got more of a speed component. So I think it's the idea of, hey, can we mix things up and maybe do some different things in different situations? And again, we've seen several teams around the country use that type of ideology and quite successfully. So I think, again, Schuster's going to be the starter, but how much we'll see of all these other guys is an interesting question.
Grand Valley fans, we're kind of concerned about how they looked offensively a year ago.
Yeah.
What do you see them doing differently this time around? You think it's going to be a matter of, okay, they're in the second year now of a new system, and guys are going to be a whole lot more accustomed to that, and it's not going to all the newness will be worn off?
I think that could be part of it, Whit. But I mean, a couple of the offensive linemen have kind of made their way out as well, both via graduation and the portal. So they're going to have some new guys, taking care of things there. Brett Weaver is the main anchor that comes back on that group, and he was an All GLIAC performer last year, and he's in our Elite 100. So they're really excited about what he can do to lead that group.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I think, in simplest terms, if you really want to look at last year, I think they really Lakers felt like Avery Moore could do a lot of work for them at quarterback. And even though he was a bit more of a run first type of guy, his throwing ability was, I think, better than people realized. He just couldn't stay healthy last year. I think he only started 7 of their 13 games. And so when you don't start all the games and you can't finish all the games, you're missing that many more reps and that much more that you're seeing to be able to develop into what they wanted them to be. So I think just even having some consistency and some health at quarterback would make a big difference for this team to move forward. And I mean, let's face it. I mean, Grand Valley only averaged about 29 points a game last year, and I think that's only the second time maybe in the last. You'd have to go back to the 90s. There basically been 2 seasons where they haven't averaged at least 30 points a game, and last year was one of them. So. And that's a 2 touchdown drop from what they were averaging with the 23 team. So, I mean, the offense is definitely something that they want to take a move forward with this year. And, guys like Jordan Johnson and Sayinus Muhammad are the leading, pass catcher and running backs that are returning. Again, guys, if they can have them be healthy, they're reliable. So they just need to get some production going out of those.
On the other side of the ball, Grand Valley's always been a fantastic, defensive squad here. Now, my question for you is, in those 2 games that they lost, things obviously got a little out of hand with that. How do they feel? What do you think they feel they need to be better at this year defensively?
I think in that Ferris game, I think you're right. Things got a little bit out of hand, but I think part of that was the defense played really well for a half, and then you're exactly right. Things got a little away from them, like some short fields, not cashing in on offense, and allowing Ferris to kind of dictate tempo had something to do in that game. In the Harding game, I think the Lakers kind of felt like they just weren't as solid up front, maybe, as they were the year before. When they went down to Searcy and held them to a touchdown and only, I think, 220 yards of total offense, or maybe that was their rushing total. I forget.
Right.
So I think they feel like for this year, for shoring up the defensive line is part of what they've been working on. So they did bring in a transfer or 2, but they also had some guys that they brought along from prior recruiting classes, maybe a little faster than they were anticipating, and they're really excited about where they think that group can be. And then obviously in the middle, when you got Elite 100 guys like Anthony Cardamone coming back, you're always going to feel good about what he's going to do, not only just as a tackling machine, but from a leadership standpoint.
Right.
And they really like Jimmy Downs and a couple of other guys they got at the linebacker spot.
Right.
So I think defensively at the front 7 level, I think they feel pretty good. Losing a couple of key DBs to the portal, and then having Ian Kennelly, who's got a really good chance of making the Lions. I mean, that secondary is going to look a little depleted, I think, early in the season. But I think they feel like that's a group they can bring along.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, they're a squad that got hit in the portal, lost some guys, Pringle and King and guys like that.
Yep.
Guys that are real production. But you know what? They're one of those squads. I've talked about this for years. They get they're on the high end of talent-wise what they're able to get, that I don't really have a lot of doubt that they're going to have enough depth to be good there. I'll be interested to see, in the coming weeks when we see them play, not necessarily their opener, but after that, what this group looks like, frankly, on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we'll talk about their opener here a little later in the show, and I don't know that that's one that they're they're going to feel like they've got a pretty good chance to win that one going in. And I would imagine their first 2, they probably feel like they'll be in good shape. But yeah, that week 2, game 3 trip to Pittsburgh, Kansas is going to be one that will probably be a pretty good litmus test for them.
Right. Absolutely. Well, not a lot of suspense here. The number one team in the country, you would imagine they're probably also going to be the number one team in their conference. Ferris State Bulldogs, heck of a run last year, especially in the postseason. They really, really turned it on. And we go ahead and we take a look at the 14-1 record. Obviously, the setback right off the bat at Pitt, and boy, I tell you, Coach Anise was able to circle the wagons and take those next few weeks where they weren't playing a top opponent and really figure out what they needed to look like on offense. Thought defensively all year they were really strong, even in
Yeah.
that setback right away to Pitt. But well, they got 6 guys on offense coming back, 6 guys defense starting coming back. And, we had gone ahead and looked into, they lost 6-8 guys in the portal that ended up going FBS, including Trinidad Chambliss, probably the biggest news of any guy leaving. He went to Ole Miss, and as spring was kind of wrapping up, some of that started to hit this squad pretty heavily. Their 2 top offensive linemen end up going to different schools, the Big Ten, and then you've got your middle backer goes, you have a wide receiver goes, a running back goes, just kind of caught wind all at once a little bit. But you know what? If anybody's going to weather the storm and figure out what they need to do and have depth ready to go, I think Coach Anise might be that guy.
Yeah, I think you and I had talked about this a lot during the offseason because I think at one point we were scratching our heads going, they had, I think it was 18 or maybe even as many as 20 different guys that were in the portal at least a certain point in time. And like you said, I think only 8 of them ended up departing. And one of them doesn't even really count because he's going to be able to play D1 this year on like a weird JUCO rule thing that he wouldn't have been able to play D2 anyway. So
realistically, Tulsa or something, right?
Jacksonville State, Tulsa. You're right. You're right. Lento Smith ended up at Tulsa. So it's really only 7 guys that actually ended up leaving. And while that's still a significant amount of production and high caliber guys that left, this is college football and there's roster turnover every year. So, I mean, it is a little bit harder. I'm not trying to undersell the challenge of replacing 7 guys who were all starters. Most of them were all GLIAC. Some of them were all American. You're expecting to get them back. At the same time, again, roster turnover is a part of life. And so you just deal with what you have coming back this year and you go from there. So, I think when you look at coming into this year, the question becomes, okay, well, who's going to play quarterback? And what does that mean for Ferris? Well, I mean, they were in that same boat last year. Yeah, Carson Gulker was back after 2 very successful seasons.
Yep.
But, I mean, people look at him as the probable starter, and he might be, but we don't know that. I mean, in his 26 games that he's played for Ferris, he's only started 6 of them. So while he has continuously had an outsized role in that offense, it typically hasn't been as the starting quarterback or the primary every down guy. So I think this could be somewhat similar to a couple other teams in the league where it's like, okay, it'll be interesting to see how many guys take snaps and what types of situations they're in. I know Chase Carter was Chambliss's backup last year. I think they really like him. Wyatt Bauer is a redshirt freshman. I think they really like a lot as well. And you could see him get a lot of snaps. So I just think between those 3 guys, it could be any combination thereof, and any one of them being the starter on Thursday, the 28th in Big Rapids against Pitt State would not surprise me in the least.
When you consider the fact that they bring back 3 starters on the offensive line, including their center, and they like some of the other guys who are going to be stepping in. If I start reading between the lines here a little bit, I don't think Coach Anise is nearly as worried about his offensive line as maybe we initially had thought he was going to be. And I think there's been a nice recovery by them. Defensively, they're going to be fast. They're going to be ready. I don't have any concerns about that side of the ball. Wyatt Bauer, young quarterback who can move. I have a feeling, you mentioned his name, Tony. I think he might get used more than people realize. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of an aspect of a 1A and 1B with Carson Gulker, because, I mean, Gulker, let's be honest, he's coming off of a tough injury.
Yeah.
Do you want to put that many miles on him all the way through? I think Coach got a chance to see last year that he can do pretty well with multiple quarterbacks, and this isn't his first time doing it. Obviously, when they first started winning titles, they were able to do it back then as well. And I wouldn't be shocked if at running back Zach Ahern ends up becoming a guy that we talk about on a fairly regular basis. I think Coach in East knows that he's got some dudes, and everyone may not know their names just yet, but I think that may happen shortly after we're reviewing that Pitt State game.
Could be. And you said a lot there, so I'll try and unpack as many different pieces of it as we can. So, I mean, let's start with the offensive line aspect of it. I mean, so you're dead on. To get Jarvis Wyndham back, to get Tim Bob back, that's huge. I mean, that's 3/5 of that line that was dominant last year. So anything that you're going to do in the run game, whether it's with quarterbacks or anybody else personnel-wise, is going to be highly functional right out of the gate. And so, and again, everybody looks at Ferris and thinks they're a high-powered offense, which they are, but it's still predicated on being able to run the football. That is their primary source of yardage and beating you to death, and that's their big thing, is they're going to still run the ball. They might use a lot of different personnel to do it, but that's what they want to do, and that all starts up front. So you're correct. To get that much talent and proven capability back up front is big. I think you're right. They could see a lot out of Zach Ahern, who's going to be a little bit more of a bigger physical runner with some speed. But I think they're excited as can be to get Deion Small back. I mean, he was a solid producer before getting hurt a couple of years ago and missing. I think he missed all of last year as a result. So I think they're excited to get him back.
Right.
I think they think Kevell Cooper could be a big producer. So I mean, there's a lot to like in the backfield and in that run game for Ferris. And then on top of that, I mean, one of the things that we talked about on the show on Sunday night was that they're going to have to get some new stars to emerge. And I'm thinking, okay, they may need that, but they still got a lot of them there. I mean, Brady Rose is still there. Cam Underwood's still there. Tariq Brett's still there. So it's like, there are a lot of guys who've made some big plays for them in big games that are going to be suiting up for them for another ride. So the offense, to me, even though there's a different signal caller, they're really not in much of a different position than they were a year ago. So I would still look for them to be highly potent once again.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of our that's the review of what the coaches had, and let's go ahead and kind of just take a snapshot of what that is, 1 through 8. Ferris, Grand Valley, Saginaw, Davenport, Michigan Tech, Wayne State, Roosevelt, Northern Michigan. I don't think there's really much in the way of surprises here. And with that said, Tony, you and I kind of racked our brains. We went back and forth about how do we see this, for the show, kind of on a unified front. How do we see our 1 through 8? And we're going to unveil that here, for our fans who are tuned in, and people in the comments. And I want to bring on in here for just one moment. We've got a comment here from Joe. For what it's worth, I'd mirror the coaches for the most part. I think GV and FSU are closer than most think. Both teams have new guys in the field. Yep. The very beginning is really what I wanted to emphasize. I'd mirror the coaches for the most part. Well, that's kind of what we landed on. We were looking at this, and Tony and I were saying, could we possibly see Wayne State move up a little bit? Could we maybe see Michigan Tech move up a little bit? And we almost had to go out of our way, I thought, to try and make a case for one of those things. And go against everything that we thought was solid with some of those teams at the top. Is that a fair take on that, Tony?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I think you and I talked ourselves around, hey, could Wayne State move up? Could Tech move up? Could Davenport move up? Could Saginaw move up? And we also took questions on, could any of those guys slide down? I don't think there seemed to be a consensus between the two of us that either Ferris or Grand Valley was necessarily going to take a big slide back.
Right.
Again, all this gets decided on the field, so we could, be mistaken in a major way and be proven otherwise. But I just, that's going into the year and knowing what we know, that doesn't seem like it would be a likelihood. But I do think that 3, 4, 5, there's a lot of unanswered questions in terms of what those teams are going to do year in and year out, based on what we've seen and what they're going to be able to bring to the table this year. So, I think there's a lot to watch there, and I still think Wayne, if Champ Edwards is healthy and that defense can come along a little bit, and they've got new coordinators in Detroit, there's some interest there. We could see all kinds of crazy things happen. I'm really interested to see, what Wayne can do in a couple of their non-conference games. They open with Tiffin and seeing what they can do to actually try and keep pace with an offense that's got one of the nation's leading rushers and whatnot. It's going to be really interesting.
Well, that's it for what we have for the preview. Now, folks, we're not done yet. Let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to look at the week 0 contests here. We only have 5 on the slate here. We figured we're not going to do a separate show just for 5 games. Let's go ahead and load it all up here on this one. So we're supersizing this show. Leave it to me to make a food reference there. We've got Bemidji going to Michigan Tech. We've got Minnesota State Moorhead and another Northern Sun game with the GLIAC going to Northern Michigan. Frankly, both games where I would say that clearly the Northern Sun would be a favorite in both. But you know what? Then that top game, Massey's got that as a 3-point contest for Bemidji, and I think that's probably a pretty well placed number right there. Northeastern State is going to be going to Saginaw Valley. We've got Pitt State going to Ferris, and then Lincoln, PA, out of the CIAA. They were a 2-win ball club last year, if I remember right. They will be going to Grand Valley for a Saturday contest. So, Tony, let's you and I do a little bit of a tale of the tape. This is something that you and I always kind of like to break down a little bit.
Yeah, I mixed up the order on you too. I think more of in like games of importance.
No worry. Well, that way we keep them guessing. We keep them guessing out there. So let's go ahead and take a look. Tony, you obviously had a chance to go ahead and prepare this. And when you're preparing these tale of the tapes, all of a sudden you look at a few things and you get a greater familiarity with the teams that you're looking at. Maybe some things that jump out to you sometimes. Moorhead. For those in the GLIAC who aren't real familiar with them, they may have heard a little bit about the quarterback they have. He gets some headlines. What did you kind of take away when looking at them and putting in their stuff?
Yeah, well, obviously, their ability to throw the football is something that I think, if I'm Northern Michigan, I'm going to be a little bit worried about because, a pass defense that gave up, almost 250 a game last year against a team that wants to throw it.
Yes,
that's usually not a good matchup. One thing that I will say is that I've talked to players who've played in the dome there, and they will tell you that defensively, sometimes it can be even tougher when you're not used to how that ball blends in with those wood beams. So maybe some of the Moorhead receivers are going to take a while to adjust to finding the ball in the air. I don't know. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, Northern defensively, they gave up 41 a game last year. I still think this game comes down to, can Northern's offense take a step forward? And if they're going to continue running that option-based attack, that's great. They're going to have to do exactly what Harding does with its option-based attack, right? It's low, slung, methodical drives that keep the football in your possession. They generate some points. But, I mean, you got to try and keep Moorhead down to, 8, maybe 9 possessions max. And that way Moorhead doesn't have much room for error. They got to be precision and score more often because they're just not going to get as many chances with it. I think, to me, that's what Northern's going to have to do. And it'll be fun to see if they can come out and make something like that happen.
Well, one of the things that Moorhead struggles with is they're not going to come out and say, but they would rather this game be a 7-on-7. That's
Could be.
that's
Could
the
be.
style they play.
Yeah.
They're not trying to live between the tackles.
And they do give up $1.75 a game last year on the ground. I mean, that's,
Yep.
so running
So,
between the tackles and hitting the dive and whatnot, maybe, that could play into Northern's hands a little bit.
well, I mean, we have a matchup here that is clearly a clash of styles.
Yep.
And not a whole lot different than mine not playing Emporia State. In another game, that's two different conferences where you see a team running a veer or a flex bone going against a team who is more of a pass happy team and who's not trying to be smash mouth. So it's an interesting change of style there. Now, Moorhead brings back everything in the passing game.
Oof.
Now you can see that they average 37 rush yards a game. That is correct. They had games where they didn't run for positive yards. Because of the fact that the passing game or the for them running the ball is throwing swing passes. That's just kind of how they live. They don't look to provide balance in kind of the old sense of this. They look at balance as we're going to go ahead and spread the ball on out. They're not looking at literally run versus pass.
Right.
So they want you to have to defend the field left to right a whole lot. And I've seen Jack Strand quite a bit up close, and he's a big fella, and he's got a really strong arm, and he gets rid of the ball very quickly. So I'll be curious to see. I don't think that we feel that Northern Michigan is as bad a football team as the 0-11 might suggest. And that stylistically, that could help them with how they go about things on offense, could help them in a contest like this.
Sure. Well, and it's funny that you were talking about, hey, that 37 yards rushing a game is not a mistake, but look at the 74 yards a game that Northern throws it and make the same comment. So, but, again, it doesn't mean you can't be a good football team that wins a lot of games. I mean, Harding doesn't throw the ball for a whole lot. And some games they'll actually put up a decent stat line in terms of the number of passing yards, but it might still only be on 3 or 4 completions because they've lulled you to sleep thinking you're going to run every time, and then they hit you over the top for a big play. I can remember Northwood back in the aughts, back when Pat Reitman was coaching, and then they ran the Woodbone. I mean, they had playoff teams that averaged 48, 49 yards passing a game. So it's not like you can't be effective, even though you're, perceived as lacking balance.
Sure. Let's kind of look at the next game here. We've got Northeastern State going to Saginaw Valley. Obviously, we know we've talked quite a bit about Saginaw Valley. What did you find out about Northeastern State?
Well, Northeastern State's that one of those teams that is playing an independent schedule these days. So, they're actually having to go out and look for games a little bit, which, there's a certain affinity for any team that's got to do that because it seems like in the GLIAC there's been plenty of that lately. I know Ferris, Saginaw, Grand Valley, even Davenport. I've talked to a few of their staff members and coaches, and that's one of the things I keep hearing is, man, finding that 10th game or that 11th game is just really brutal. So, kudos to both staffs for, figuring things out, how to get together. I mean, I think Northeastern State, obviously we know that when they were a full member of the MIAA, that they were typically towards the bottom of that league. So it was a team that we didn't expect necessarily to do a whole lot year in, year out. So to see them go 2-9 last year wasn't a big surprise. But I mean, you look at some of their numbers. I mean, they ran the ball okay. They threw the ball okay. Defense was a little porous, but they still found a way to win a couple of ball games. And I think, they might be, the MIAA, as we all know, and as Massey loves to espouse, is one of the premier leagues, top to bottom in the country. So even a low-level team in that league is still going to be a team that you have to kind of take some notice of because they're going to have some dudes, and they're still going to play probably a physical brand of football that allows them to stay close. Now, do I think they've got what they need to be able to go into Saginaw and pull an upset? I don't think so. But again, this is going to be a real interesting test for Saginaw right out of the chute in terms of, okay, we got a lot of pieces we got to replace on defense. How's that all going to come together?
Right. Little known fact about Northeastern. I recall watching them last year. They played UCO, Central Oklahoma, and had them down.
Yes.
40-14.
Mm-hmm.
40-14.
Yeah.
Found a way to lose the game 64-57 in a college basketball score there.
And
but
a basketball score, that's right.
Yeah, but they threw the ball for over
quarterback
400
fouled
yards.
out.
Yes, but they've got an All-American tight end. They have got a team that has scored some points. They lost in a really tight game to Washburn at the end of last year. Washburn was not a good team in the MIAA, but they're always a respectable team. So I'll be curious to see if Northeastern has something for Saginaw Valley in that game. Once again, Saginaw Valley, we don't know fully what they're going to have defensively. So I think this is actually kind of a good test for Saginaw right out of the chute, having a team that is offensively capable going against them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think by that same token, I think we're going to learn real quick. Okay, did Saginaw's offense take the step forward that we all think it's going to?
Right.
My hunch is that'll be the difference, but yeah, that actually has a little bit more intrigue to it than I think the 2-9 record that Northeastern State sported last year might normally indicate.
Yep. Well, let's go ahead. Moving on into our next contest here in the mix, we've got Lincoln, PA, the CIAA. There we go, 2-8 record. I was right. Okay. Going into Grand Valley. This will be an experience for Lincoln going into Grand Valley, certainly. My first thoughts when I took a look here is there's a pretty healthy difference between their offensive scoring and what they're doing on defense. And I'd like to think, Tony, and I'd like to think that this would be a time for Grand Valley to work some things out offensively, try some things without necessarily a huge concern about, is this one going to go back for a pick six or something? And, kind of see what they have.
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint that, again, if you're Grand Valley and you feel like, okay, defense, we know what we got back, we're going to feel really solid about that, and we got a team coming in that only put up 12 points a game last year, you're exactly right. Let's take some chances. Let's not necessarily be as vanilla as maybe we would be against a more elite opponent.
Right.
Let's figure out how to see how far we can push things and see how far we can progress as quickly as we can, because we're going to have tougher opponents in a few weeks.
Totally.
Yeah, let's get the sea legs under us a little bit and see what we can put together, because again, we feel like the defense can bail us out if we make a couple of mistakes early. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I think Isaiah Johnson was the quarterback for Lincoln last year. I'm pretty sure he led the team in passing and rushing, so he's another one of those dual threat guys, kind of like a Champ Edwards at Wayne. Yeah, I've been waiting all show for this. Lincoln doesn't have their roster up either. So after you gave a couple other schools a hard time early in the show, I'm going to give it to him late, because I don't know whether that kid's back and whether he's going to be coming into Lovers to try and make some stuff happen.
We could do a separate roast to those teams specifically, but yes.
So yeah. So look, I mean, it's no disrespect to Lincoln. I mean, this is a proud program that's played football for a long time, and I think they're going to come in and do everything they can to prove that they belong on that field. But I'm with you, talent top to bottom, and just based on what we know about what Grand Valley typically brings in, this is probably a good proving ground for them to try and get some kinks worked out as they work through the early part of the season. Sure.
Well, we've now just made it to the Lincoln bulletin board. Yep. But moving on to the next game, we've got Bemidji State going to Michigan Tech. Bemidji State ranked 19th coming on in. What were some of your observations with Bemidji State? Obviously, you got a chance to see them last year in the playoffs, and they went on a little bit of a run. But digging further into the numbers, what'd you find?
Well, I mean, again, this is a team that plays a similar style, frankly, to what Tech does. I mean, you look at the score differential. They scored more than they gave up, but it didn't by a whole lot. I mean, when you think of a team that wins 10 games, normally you think that scoring differential week in and week out is a number bigger than 9. So this is a team that's going to be methodical. They're just going to out execute you. They're not going to hurt themselves, and that's pretty much what we're used to seeing from Tech year in and year out. I think the one thing that I was a little surprised about with Tech as the year progressed last year was the defense was a little leakier than maybe we were accustomed to seeing. Again, they had some tough injuries that impacted that a little bit. So if they can shore that up, that's going to be something that they're going to need to do, because obviously if you look at that bottom line of that tail of the tape, Bemidji was week in, week out 100 yards better at slowing people down than what Tech was. And that's an elite level defense that only gives up, 256 a game.
That number kind of jumps off the page a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And I did watch parts of this game last year, and I didn't get to see much of it until the fourth quarter. I was busy bopping around with some other things, and I think I had some high school football stuff that I was at. But, I mean, physically, it looked like these two teams were in a similar kind of makeup. So, I mean, I didn't expect Tech to go on the road. I didn't think they'd get blown out, but I was like, okay. I mean, I got to figure that Bemidji's probably, a 6 or 7 point favorite in this one. And they didn't look 6 or 7 points better in the parts of the game that I watched. So,
right.
I mean, that ended up being a heck of a ball game, and Tech darn near pulled off the upset in it. So
right.
I think Tech's got this one circled, to be honest with you. They feel like that's a team they can beat, and then they're going to get them in their barn. So, let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah, this is Bemidji loses 9 of 11 offense or defensive starters. Most of that front 4 and front 7, frankly, that really put pressure on the other offense to make anything go. So I think that's my concern for a Bemidji team coming into this is they've got a lot of production to replace on that side of the football. They have a changeover at quarterback, but they've got some athletic options at that quarterback spot. And I'll be curious to see kind of what a little bit that looks like. They may have a 1A and 1B themselves, but they will have a new starter. And they've lost some playmakers on offense. So Bemidji State, I think this is a tough road contest for them.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate. And I would not be surprised to see Tech win this game at home. I'm not sure which way I'm leaning just yet. I'll be doing my Northern Sun pick on that, at the beginning of next week. But I think it's a coin flip contest. I really do.
I do too. And again, I think when we talked about this game last year, I think we felt like Tech had a puncher's chance. I think this year we feel like they've got a real chance. So I mean, I would say that this is one too where the GLIAC homer in me wants to pick the Huskies, but again, throwing a new quarterback out there in his first college start could be a tall order. But I like, to your point, Bemidji might be doing the same thing, and he's got to do it on the road. So
totally.
Yep.
Well, moving on to the last game, not a bad game here.
No.
Battle of 2 top 10 teams. We've got our number 10 Pitt State going to Ferris State, seeing if they can win 2 in a row against Ferris State. You don't hear that very often. 8-3 year for Pitt State a season ago. Very tough schedule.
Yeah.
14-1 for Ferris. When we take a look at the numbers here, this does not look like it should be a real tight game. And what I mean by that is the scoring output for Ferris at 45 versus what Pitt had last year at 24. And the concerns that Pitt kind of had offensively as the year continued. That's, I think, to me, one of the things that I look at with this, Tony, is can Pitt become just, frankly, have more firepower offensively? Because, boy, if they don't, it's hard to see them hanging around with Ferris State at Ferris State, isn't it?
I think so. The only caveat that I'm going to put on that is that if you look at the Ferris defense, on a couple of slides ago, we had Justin Payout, who's on our Elite 100 list.
Yep.
We showed him. We know he's back. We know Alston Ware is back. I think they get Jalen Jones back. So I think they feel like on the back end, they're probably pretty good. And I think Tyrone Fowler, he was on our Elite 100 too, was he not?
No, but I'd tell you, he wasn't far
close.
away from it.
He was close. That's right. Oh, sorry. Jarvis Wyndham was the other Ferris guy.
Yep.
We talked about Tyrone Fowler. So at the defensive end position, I think they feel like they're pretty solid. The middle of the defensive line and that linebacking core is going to be all new for the most part. And when you think about that linebacking core, I mean, Sepasiah Pia was a multi-time All-GLIAC guy. He transferred up to the MAC. You lose Connor Neer, who transferred back from Oklahoma for a year. And then is it Jason Williams? They had another linebacker whose name's escaping me, but he was a 3-year starter and a 45 tackle a year guy. So, I mean, he wasn't even their premier guy. And you look at him, it's like, how much more reliable are you going to get? And so those known quantities in that middle of the defense, if I'm Pitt State, that's where I got to try and attack. And, with a new quarterback that they're going to have, some unproven talent on the outside. I don't know. Pitt State is usually really elite at tight end. I don't know what they've got there because I think they're a really good guy from last year. He transferred out as well. So, yeah, offensively, that's where I think I got to attack is the middle. But, of course, then, Ferris, all they got to do is stack the box, and they're probably going to be able to still slow it down. So I'm with you. I share the same concern that can Pitt State put up enough points to actually keep pace in this one? I don't know that scoring 45 is necessarily something that Ferris, expects to do against a Pitt State defense that we know is going to be very good because that they always are. But I still don't know if Pitt State's got enough firepower to keep up with whatever Ferris is going to produce. And I guarantee it's going to be more than the 3 that they put up at Kearney Smith last year.
It feels to me like this is either going to be a really low scoring game again, where both teams are kind of playing things close to the vest because they both know that they are very good defensive teams and very athletic. Or Ferris just gets out and serves revenge, and this game is Ferris. It just feels that way to me.
Yeah, I don't know. My gut's telling me that this is going to be like a 33-13 kind of thing.
Okay.
Whether that's front end or back end, whether it's, maybe, 13-10 at the break and then Ferris stretches it out late, or if they jump on them and it's 21-0, and then all of a sudden, they get overexcited and some of the youth they have at some of those positions puts the ball on the deck a couple of times and a couple of turnovers keep Pitt in it. I don't know. It could be one or the other, but I still feel like Ferris is probably going to be a 2 or 3 score edge in this one. So I just feel like there's so much more that we know about Ferris and so much that we still don't about Pitt. And that's the only reason that I think that it's that lopsided.
Sure. Well, Tony, let's go ahead. We've got some comments that want to go ahead and kind of throw on in. Steve says, thanks for your insight, Tony. Steve, thanks for tuning on in with us here.
Good aboard, Steve.
We've got Dykstra giving me a hard time about the Cubs hat. I've been here for a few days straight. I had to look different, otherwise people are gonna be like, that guy's on again. Yeah, and the Cubs did win 2 in a row against the Brewers, who are winning that division and winning the National League for that matter. So
yeah, no kidding.
I have to start wearing the hat just to hope to change something. But a few other comments we had. We were talking about Chicago area earlier. Chicago State University, who may be the worst athletic program in the history of mankind, is going to be they're going to be starting up a program. I don't even know if they have a place to play yet. I'm not joking. But they will be playing the FCS level. I hate to say this, but I think that this is going to be a tire fire. And I don't know if that's going to affect what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Maybe it is, and I'll come on here, and if I was wrong, I'll flat out say it. So, but I'll also, kind of timely, our guy AC popped in. Looking forward to the NSIC versus GLIAC playoff matchups.
So am I.
Given the fact that it's a lot of that, kind of smash mouth, physical, football, and it's going to be in the cold weather. It seems like this is going to be something that will be fairly memorable. And what happens if you have, for example, and I'm just kind of picturing here, let's say Mankato has a really strong year and gets to the point where they're hosting a playoff game, and let's say you have, the Ferris keeps on rocking, and if Grand Valley's only setback is a game like that, and they end up sending a Grand Valley to Mankato and they're playing on the grass in the cold, something about that feels like a heck of a matchup. Now I realize I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but That's fantasy booking is what that is. When
Yeah,
it comes
but you know what? That's
you know.
part of what makes this fun too. I mean, that's the D2 nerd, right? I mean, because like in my mind, I go to things like that. I mean, I remember some knockdown, drag out Grand Valley, Minnesota, Duluth games back in the day.
Yep.
But I also remember some playoff games where Ferris was playing Ashland and it was knockdown, drag out, and Grand Valley against Ashland that was knockdown, drag out. And I remember some playoff games where Findlay was involved. I mean, so getting the GMAC back into this this mess is going to be a little bit of fun too, because there's some old school nostalgic type of matchups that we could see that I think GLIAC fans will be interested to kind of get back into the fold.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to thank. We had a whole lot of comments tonight, so I wanted to thank everyone for kind of jumping on in. And guys, obviously, we're not going to put all the comments on in. We're going to kind of stick to ones that we think will kind of supplement what we're covering on the show and speak to where we were at. But Tony and I will be at it each week. And, you know, you won't see us next week because we kind of had a two for this time. But you know what? We got some contests to play in 8 days?
Yeah.
We're going to have some football games. So, guys, I know it's, you know, we've been talking about at some point we're going to get to the football season. We're 8 days away now. So, fun times ahead. Tony, I appreciate you joining me tonight, buddy. And
same to you, Witt.
For all our fan base here, appreciate you guys tuning in. See you next week.